You learn to sleep through a lot of things in the Army. Weird itches, noisy bunkmates, briefings from superior officers. But the one thing I never got used to sleeping through was the sound of incoming rocket fire. I was deployed to southern Iraq, to a small outpost. This was 2010, and combat operations were over. So that's what I'd heard, and so I was completely surprised when I got there and I found out that people were actually going to be shooting at us. Nobody had told me that before, at least I don't think they did. It might have been one of those briefings that I'd slept through. But they told us this, and I was very concerned. But the sergeant who was giving the safety briefing said, "Don't worry, because rockets can't hurt you. They're safe. All you have to do is lie flat on the ground when you hear the siren, and they'll go right over your head, and they'll miss you." Well, that was comforting. After the briefing, we went outside the tent, and I noticed that there were all these big concrete bunkers everywhere, and I said to the sergeant, "Wouldn't it make sense when the rockets are coming that we go inside one of those rocket-proof bunkers?" And the sergeant said, "No, you can't do that. That's silly. If you do that, you're going to die, because every second that you're going towards the bunker is a second that you're not lying flat on the ground." So I said, "If those bunkers are not for us to go into when the rockets are coming, what are they for?" And he did not have a satisfactory answer. So I wondered when I was going to have my first encounter with the rockets, and it turned out I would not have to wait long. It was about 4 days into this deployment. I was outside the headquarters building, just walking around in this gravel field with a bunch of other soldiers there, when the loudest noise I had ever heard in my life, the siren, went off, shouting that there was a rocket that was coming towards us. And I realized, oh my God, there's somebody really shooting at us. This is a first for me. I saw the bunkers. They were about 50 feet away from me. I knew that I could make them if I sprinted in about 5 seconds, but I remembered what the sergeant said about what to do in case of a rocket. I was an officer, so I knew I had to set the example, and also I was paralyzed with fear. So instead of running, I did what I was supposed to. I got on the ground as flat as I possibly could. I was very proud of myself. I looked up to see all the other soldiers who were following my example and doing what I did because it was the right thing to do. Not a single one of them. Everybody who I was out there with, soldiers, NCOs, and officers, they all took off, sprinting to the nearest bunker. "No," I wanted to say, "that's a terrible idea." But 5 seconds later, everybody was safe, and the only person out there on the field was me. So the siren is going off. It's like a 50-foot-tall heartbeat going off, and I know that the rocket is getting closer. And there is a terrible feeling that you have when somebody is shooting at you. It's a feeling like no other. The only feeling that is worse is the feeling you get when you know that you're the only one who's going to die because you're the only one who followed the directions. It felt like hours, but it must have only been a few seconds. I heard another sound. It was a whistle, like a cartoon whistle from Wile E. Coyote. And I looked up and I saw the rocket coming in. It was black metal against the black sky. It went over my head. It went over the headquarters building and disappeared somewhere behind me. And then I heard a pop. It blew up somewhere near the chow hall. At that point, I decided it was okay to run to the safety of a bunker. Well, that was my first encounter with the rockets, but it was not the last. They continued to shoot at us through the fall. The insurgents took a break shooting at us in the winter because I guess insurgents don't like to be cold. But then in the spring, they started shooting at us again with a vengeance, a lot more frequent and a lot more accurate. And on April 2nd, a rocket came in low and hit a building that Staff Sergeant Christian Garcia and Staff Sergeant Quadi Hudgens were in, and both of them were killed in the blast. Now, after that, I couldn't sleep. I stopped sleeping altogether. Just the idea of closing my eyes and never being able to open them again really kept me up. But this wasn't tenable, so at one point I checked myself into combat stress and I asked the doctor to prescribe me something. He said, "Here, take this Ambien." Everybody on the base is using it. So I said, "That's great news." And I took it, and it seemed like it really worked because I got to sleep. However, that night, I had a dream that somebody was in my room standing over my bed, and I got up screaming, and I went back to the doctor the next day, and I said, I think this Ambien is making me hallucinate. And the doctor said, yes, that's a common side effect. So, it took me about a minute to process the implications of 900 people armed with assault rifles taking medicine that made them hallucinate. I'm a civilian now. I said goodbye to all things Army about 7 years ago. It took a lot of therapy, the love of a very patient woman, a fluffy dog, and some kind friends, but now I can finally sleep through the night, at least as well as the father of a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old can. But sometimes I'll hear a noise. I will hear a pop or a whistle or a siren, and I'll be right there again on the ground, as flat as I can, waiting for the next rocket to come in. Thank you.
Let's hear it again, Daniel.